Yes, I was a cabinet minister and I had to spout all kinds of bollocks.
But you don't give a fuck.
I don't. And why should I? Well, I'm still angry and I have been angry all this time. And I'm angry because I want Britain to change. You know, we have a mainstream media that is fundamentally captured. The BBC is the worst example. You only invited me on to be abused.
That's not... See, red pill, base Liz Truss.
Indeed. I obviously haven't read the scandalous book you wrote about me. When you admit I was right and you were wrong, then I'm happy to stop talking about it, Harry.
Good evening and welcome to a very special one-off edition of Harry Cole Saves the West. With me here from Fox News in Washington, D.C. is, I'm going to say former Prime Minister Liz Truss, but actually it's no longer former Prime Minister Liz Truss, it's now
still former Prime Minister.
Host of the Liz Truss show. I mean, I'm honoured today.
That's right, we're now fellow podcasters, Harry.
Well, we don't really like the word podcast. It's more of a sort of, you know,
I do need to take you up on your show title, Harry, because I point out that I published my book, 10 Years to Save the West, before your show was out. So I haven't received a single royalty check.
I'm sorry about that, but I mean, look, we're all trying to do our bit.
We're all trying to earn a living, Harry.
But, you know, you wrote the book, I steal the title, you steal the show. I mean, I think we're kind of even, right?
I'm not quite sure about your show, stolen, but anyway.
Tell us about your show, because it is, you know, the first episode's gone out today. You're claiming you're going to be taking down the sinister forces that forced you out of power. Who are they? Who's coming on?
Well, first of all, the forces that pushed me out of power: the Bank of England, the Treasury, the economic establishment, the mainstream media, the Conservatives in name only in the Conservative Party,
Conservative MPs,
the World Economic Forum brigade, which includes everybody from Mark Carney to Justin Trudeau.
He's in town today for the.
I know he is. I've already heard him. I've managed to avoid him so far, but what we're dealing with here is an establishment who fundamentally are managing decline in Britain.
Yeah.
And I tried to take them on, and they were more interested in protecting their own backs than helping me deliver a transformative agenda. And we've seen what the alternative looks like. It's been absolutely disastrous. We're in an economic doom loop. We've got a huge problem now with illegal migration. We've got a huge problem with everything from the welfare bill to public service productivity. It's a disaster zone. I
want to read you something, and you can guess who said this. It is far easier writing a newspaper column than being either PM or Chancellor, but one thing that being out of office gives you is time to think. And it's clear that as a country, this is Britain the person's talking about, we face choices that cannot be ducked any longer. We can either reduce our debt burden and the right size of the state, starting with welfare and deregulation, or we could face ever higher taxes and borrowing and ever lower growth. Who do you think said that?
Is it Tony Blair?
No, it was Rishi Sunak.
Really?
In his Sunday Times column last week. That sounded pretty much like your stump speech the entire time you were opposing him to become Prime Minister, which you did briefly in 2022, as we know. You're kind of vindicated by that, aren't you?
Well, I mean, I don't really think it particularly matters what he writes. I mean, I don't think he's not a relevant person to the political debate. I mean, he is somebody who did the bidding of the Treasury while he was in office, and that's also my critique of Rachel Reeves. You know, that you've got a whole generation of politicians who've been content to hold red boxes, to go along with what the civil servants tell them, and to manage decline and not really kick up a fuss about what's going on. And the failure of 14 years of Conservative government was not repealing the Human Rights Act, not making the Bank of England accountable, not taking control of the civil service.
Well,
and we have people who are just spokespeople for the bureaucracy.
If anything, it's the opposite. It's actually handing more control and power to the civil service.
Yes, well, of course, the Conservatives established the OBR, which
their American friends, the Office of Budget Responsibility.
And, you know, the world is now catching up with me that the OBR is an utter disaster. But I was saying that back in 2022, and there was all kinds of people saying, oh, it's terrible, she didn't get an OBR forecast.
How did you feel when you saw, the boss of the OBR forced out by the Chancellor, essentially?
I wish both of them could have lost, to be honest. I mean, it's like...
But, are you starting to feel vindicated? Are you still, obviously, what happened, you were pretty angry. You're pretty angry in that book, which I've read.
I'm still angry.
You're still angry?
I'm still angry, Harry.
And
you're
back and you're here for vengeance?
Well, I'm still angry, and I have been angry all this time. And I'm angry because I want Britain to change. I think we are headed for disaster. I mean, we're here in the US. President Trump has called out today and said we're in a civilizational moment. He's absolutely right. And I feel angry that so many people in Britain, particularly in the British establishment, are just prepared to do nothing and see this happen.
And so you're hoping they're going to come on the show and tuss it out with you? Fight it
certainly, yes.
I'll take
Rishi, on all comers.
The Bank of England.
Well, I've just invited Kemi Badenoch to appear on the show, so I will talk to.
I suspect we'll talk
to
more.
Everybody.
I suspect we'll talk about her more. Is that a big enough platform for you though? I mean, you've gone from being a former Foreign Secretary, a former Prime Minister, an MP of 20, how many years? 14 years in Parliament, and now you've joined us content machines. Do you feel that's going to be enough to do turn these tides that you're trying to take?
The reason I'm doing it is, what I saw in politics and what I saw in Number 10 is the huge power of the media to shape the narrative. So there's been a complete lie told about what happened in October 2022.
There's a very good book about it as well.
The fact is that the Bank of England in 2024 admitted that 2/3 of the market crisis was down to their failure to regulate LDIs.
Yeah.
That's in addition to them announcing the sale of £40 billion worth of gilts the day before the mini-budget.
Yeah.
And yet the BBC et al. allow Rachel Reeves to lie. They allow people in the Conservative Party to lie, like Robert Jenrick and indeed Kemi Badenoch and Mel Stride, about what happened in 2022. So this is why I have decided that we have a massive problem with the media. And it's not just my story, by the way. They've lied about everything from the grooming gangs to President Trump to what's going on in Gaza. We have a mainstream media that is fundamentally captured. The BBC is the worst example, but I'd say organisations like the FT aren't very much better. And what we need is an independent media revolution like we've seen in America. The Joe Rogans, the Megyn Kellys.
The Harry Coles saving the West.
Well, I don't really know which side of the Atlantic you're on, but the point is, and I would argue that News Corp isn't exactly independent media, Harry.
I don't know. We don't get told what to say on the show.
Yeah, well, that's what they all say, isn't it? That's what all the newspaper editors claim as well. But the point is that they have an independent media revolution. I think it's a really important part of what we need to achieve in the UK. I don't think it's the only part. I think there needs to be a much more mass popular movement. I also think we need people like the Elon Musks and the Scott Bessents to serve in government. Yeah. I think we need a total change of culture in business. But I've got to start somewhere.
I thought, look, we've done interviews before, on camera and off. We don't need to relitigate the 2022-23, what happened there.
Just when you admit I was right and you were wrong, then I'm happy to stop talking about it, Harry.
I'm an impartial
You're not. There's
scribe.
Nothing impartial about you.
If you want to see those interviews, they are still on YouTube. But let's stick on that. Stick on this idea that a sort of independent media revolution, as you're saying, it bypassing the mainstream media. It's kind of. Are you taking inspiration from Donald Trump and his?
Absolutely,
and what he's done?
Absolutely.
And you think that Britain is ready for that sort of?
No, it needs to be ready.
Shock therapy.
It needs to be ready. I think people in Britain now understand we've got a serious problem.
Well, yeah.
The mainstream parties are now polling jointly below 30% in the polls.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister in British history.
Since you.
No, he's more unpopular than me.
Really?
He's the most unpopular. And what's interesting is every successive Prime Minister is more unpopular than the last. And
that's a broken system then,
that's
isn't it?
Broken system. Exactly. You've answered your own question there. It's a broken system, and do the public quite understand how broken it is and how much change is needed? That's why you need independent media to tell them, because the fact is the likes of the BBC are in the pockets of the bureaucracy. They're in the pockets of the establishment. They're in the pockets of the NGOs like Stonewall and Greenpeace and all of these people. That's why you need independent media.
And you know, you could argue they're sort of same sides of the coin. My fear is on the broken system issue is that actually it's going to get really nasty quite quickly because, you know.
It's already nasty.
David Cameron,
We've already
Boris
got the
Johnson,
left, you know, calling everybody who express any concerns a fascist.
Liz,
it's already nasty, Harry.
It is. Liz Truss
but
comes
we
in,
need to take the gloves off.
Well, I think the gloves are coming off naturally, though. I mean, but then where do we end up? There's a point I'm making. Keir Starmer came in with all the will in the world to see. You know, the country clearly was crying out for change. They wanted change in 2016 with Brexit. They wanted change.
You are literally copying all my lines. I mean, why don't you just, you know?
Well, we could be a co-host. People wanted change in 2019, didn't get it. They wanted change in 2024. They don't like what they've seen so far.
Well, they haven't got any change because
exactly. But
all Keir Starmer has done is accelerated a failing policy in pretty much every case.
But it's not yet. But the fact is that prime ministers, I don't need to tell you, come in and they're pulling these levers and they're realising that nothing's happening. And lo and behold, you've got Labour officials in number 10 basically saying Dom Cummings and Liz Truss were kind of right about these things. And then, so say, you know, whatever they limp onto, and if you look at the current polling in Britain, it looks like Nigel Farage could form a government. Now, what happens when he comes in and hits exactly the same roadblocks? You know, it almost feels like Nigel Farage and reform is the last chance for, you know, yes, they're of the right, but they're not the far right and they're not the far left. My fear is that when things get nasty, it's going to, you know, if you look across Europe...
Let's stop things getting nasty.
How?
Let's actually fix it. And look, what we need to make sure is that when a new Prime Minister is elected in 2029, and we don't know who that will be, could be Farage, could be somebody else.
Could be Kemi.
But we need to make sure, it could be Kemi, looking forward to seeing her on my show. It could be Kemi, but what we need to make sure is whoever that is, the public understand that the whole system needs to change. There need to be people ready to serve in that new system. There needs to be the legislation ready to go, i.e. you need all the elements of the Trump revolution, Project 2025, you need... Do you wish
you'd done that in that summer of 2022?
Like, I literally had 6 weeks. You can't recruit an army of people to serve in government in 6 weeks while you're busy trying to run a leadership campaign.
It's different over here in the US.
No, but you can't. I mean, I just didn't have time.
No, but
if I'd had 5 years, maybe I would have done it.
But the whole system is set up differently in the fact that, you know, 3,500, 4,000 political appointees take over every government department. Whereas actually, you know, when a government changes, even if it changes by party, you know, you change the 5 people at the top.
What I'm saying, Harry, is we need to change that. I'm saying that is the problem.
Yeah.
That this has got worse. So in 1854, we had Northcote Rebellion, which created the permanent civil service.
Yeah.
Britain was run without a permanent civil service before then.
They all fitted
and did pretty damn well.
Well, they ran an empire from it.
That was when things were going well. But since we've had a permanent civil service, from the start of the 20th century, I think things have been on a downhill trajectory. Attlee made it a lot worse with nationalising everything.
Yeah.
Town and Country Planning Act. And then Blair turbocharged it.
Enshrined it
with the creation of the so-called Independent Bank of England, in fact, the unaccountable Bank of England, with the judiciary becoming unaccountable, with the Constitutional Reform Act, with the empowerment of the civil service and bureaucracy. So it used to be the case, for example, that the Home Secretary could hire and fire a police chief.
Yeah.
So we've seen appalling failings from West Midlands, from the Met Police.
Yorkshire.
Nobody gets hired and fired anymore.
Well, they say we can't intervene. We can't intervene in an operational decision.
Because operational independence. You know, whenever you hear the word independence, what it means is unaccountable. That's the clue. The independent OBR, the Independent Bank of England, the operational independence of the police. It means don't even try and criticise me. So this week we heard the Bank of England governor say the OBR should not be criticised because they are an independent body.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm sorry.
It's like with the judges as well. You can't touch the judiciary.
These people have huge power. The OBR are deciding fiscal policy. The Bank of England is deciding monetary policy, which means no young person can get on the housing ladder because asset prices were inflated thanks to the Bank of England's money printing. They're not accountable for that. And this is why people are fundamentally so angry. And what I want to do on my show is really talk about why this has happened, talk about these unaccountable institutions. and start putting their names up in lights. Thank God people have actually heard of Richard Hughes. I mean, he was operating for years, basically controlling British fiscal policy. No one knew who the hell he was.
Do you think you're the right spokesman for this, though? Obviously, you're quite an easy target for your old
I do
friends
not
in the
give
Conservative...
a
You can
monkeys.
swear. you can swear, it's fine.
I do not care. I do not care. I mean,
you do have a remarkable resilience. Other people would have sort of gone away and sort of licked their wounds and gone and done something else or moved into a different field. But you don't give a fuck.
I don't. And why should I?
And you're just
because everything I have said about the Bank of England, about the OBR, has proven to be right. Exactly what I predicted would happen with the economy, which is if we carried on raising taxes, we'd end up with higher debt, not lower debt. Because the Bank of England and the OBR's advice has been followed to the letter. The debt is worse, growth is lower, industries are closing down. If we'd got fracking, if we'd done fracking, we'd have lower energy prices now. So I've been completely vindicated in everything I've said. And the fact that nobody will, in the mainstream media, will admit that, so tells you what you need to know.
You set up your own media to...
Correct.
Correct. Do you feel like you get a fairer hearing?
On my own show, yes.
On your own show, it's good, isn't it? You've cracked it.
Exactly.
No, do you feel like you get a fairer hearing?
I like to see myself as a solutions person, and if there's a problem, the lying mainstream media, the solution is your own media.
You're goading me into relitigating the past now. I mean, do you really? No, let's not do it. Come, we're sticking to what I want to talk about, which is
all these people that criticise me, they're not doing that well, are they?
Do you feel like you get a better hearing on this side of the pond in the United States?
Well, first of all, the country, because it is under the leadership of President Trump, it's understood the problem much better than Britain has. They understand, the right in America understand that you can't appease the left, you can't triangulate. What Trump does is double down. Yeah. He doubled down. He didn't go around trying to appease CNN. He went on things like the Joe Rogan show. He is always calling out the left in a very, very direct way. So I think the Americans have understood the problem. The American right has understood the problem better than the British right. But they also get the power of the deep state. And I find the whole situation with the Bank of England, Trump is very concerned about what the Federal Reserve's powers are, how they've operated. I think they get it much more than British politics does.
But is Britain ready for that sort of shock?
Well, it needs to get ready, otherwise it's finished. I mean, that's the bottom line.
We have to operate within the realities of where the country is and where the politicians are.
This is where you are part of the establishment.
Well, you tried to blow it up last time. It didn't go that well, did it?
This time I'm getting a bigger bazooka. That's the point.
But do you really think that the British public, when you hear Liz Truss say, if anything, I should have gone harder?
I definitely should. I would have gone harder if I could have done. And I would have got rid of the governor of the Bank of England, etc., if I couldn't done. I did not have the time.
But you got rid of the head of the Treasury. The markets wet themselves.
But that tells you there's a problem with the overall system.
Exactly. But my point I'm making is that you talk about big bazookas and going harder and faster and scrapping the independence of the Bank of England.
It wasn't the markets, by the way. What happened?
We all saw the graph.
What happens is the markets respond to the signals sent out by the Treasury, by the Bank of England.
And by the Prime Minister.
If the Treasury and the Bank of England want to undermine the Prime Minister, they can. And I think there's a problem with a system where that can happen.
Wasn't it the fact, though, that you had...
I thought you didn't want to relitigate this.
You forced me into it.
No.
You got 40 billion,
I was going to make a point.
You had £40 billion pounds worth of tax cuts at the same time as a seemingly unlimited intervention in the energy market. And it was the two of those together that sent.
So first of all, the energy policy wasn't changed.
It was still on the. It still had a 60 billion, potentially 60 billion quid's worth of subsidies on the same ledger.
That was according to
without any cuts.
That was according to an OBR estimate that proved to be wrong. But no, I'm going to answer this point.
Go on.
The energy policy wasn't changed. The only policy I was forced to reverse was corporation tax, which has actually been a disaster. But the most important point is the Bank of England themselves did an analysis post facto and admitted 2/3 of the market movement was down to their failure. even the New Statesman, Harry.
Even the New Statesman. Are you going to say compare Harry Cole Saves the West in the same sentence as the New Statesman?
Well, I mean, the New Statesman seem to have more idea about economics than you do, which is pretty worrying. But even the New Statesman say that if the Bank of England had actually done their job, the crisis in 2022 wouldn't have happened. This is even the New Statesman, so I suggest you go and read.
No,
have you read the Bank of England report?
I think
from April 2024.
I think I wrote it up in the Sun newspaper.
Very good.
There we go.
Well, there we are. But I think this, what I'm trying to explain here, and I don't particularly want to relitigate everything. What I'm trying to explain is that we have institutions in Britain that are more powerful than elected politicians.
Yes, I think that is fair.
And this is true of the judiciary, it's true of the police, it's true of the bureaucrats, it's true of the Bank of England. And these people have a collective worldview. They believe in the human rights of immigrants are just as important as the human rights of people in Britain. They believe in Keynesian economics. They're obsessed with DEI and net zero, and they are running the country into the ground. And what happens is successive prime ministers are taking over the controls of the runaway train.
Yeah.
And they realise, when I tried to put the brakes on, I got chucked out of the driver's seat rather than, this is what's happening. And the reason I'm doing this is I care about the future of the country. And you could say, well, I'm in the wrong place, whatever. I mean, I think I'm the right spokesperson because I understand how these people are exercising their levers of power and what needs to change. And what I'm saying to you is these people need to be replaced, Harry.
You
can't just replace the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. If you have Nigel Farage with the same civil servants that are in today and the same structure, the same thing's going to happen. The same runaway train will carry on running away.
Do you see anyone currently on the pitch do you think would have the political capital, the political cajones, the force, and could Nigel Farage do what you're saying needs to be done? Or is there anyone there that could do it?
They certainly can't do it on their own. They would need Musk-type figures to go in and actually run the bureaucracy. So that's the biggest gap in British politics isn't, you might look at the current Labour cabinet and see the biggest gap is competent cabinet ministers. Yeah. But actually the biggest gap is people that can actually run the government. And what I mean by that is people who are able to get things done, whether it's deporting illegal immigrants, whether it's running a proper fiscal policy. That's what we are sorely missing in Britain. I know exactly what policies need to be implemented.
Who would be your ideal pick, though, for Chancellor? Who on the business side of things?
This is what I'm complaining about the press.
But from outside, you say we need Elon Musk-like figures.
Not as the Chancellor, as the Permanent Secretary to the Treasury.
I see.
Who would be my
the civil servants? My iPad's just died, so I'm going to have to.
Well, you're going to have to actually think.
No, it's
That'll be a first for British journalists.
I'm not even going. I'm just Anyway,
you only invited me on to be abused.
That's not. Actually, we like a more of a sort of collegiate atmosphere on this show.
As if
chewing over
the gloves
the big
are
issue.
off. If you've not heard the subtitle of my show, the gloves are off. But who would I say would be a good permanent secretary to the Treasury? I think that is the question. So, a Scott Bessent figure who...
As long as you're not shorting the pound again.
Well, yeah, but he's experienced at dealing with the financial markets.
Of course he's one of a $500 billion fund.
He used to live in London. If we could have Scott Bessent as the permanent secretary of the Treasury, I think he'd do a damn good job.
So you think someone, hedge fund manager, someone who's actually run a massive fund, you could think of the...
Or somebody to control government spending who's actually been the finance director of a major company.
Yeah.
Who could go in and run the government spending department. Somebody deporting illegal immigrants who maybe is from the armed forces.
Yeah.
A former army general who can run an ICI type of force. But these are not cabinet ministers. The job of a cabinet minister spend a lot of time keeping backbench MPs on board and appearing on the media.
Yeah.
That's not what's missing. That's not what's missing in British politics. What's missing is people to actually implement things.
Donald Trump obviously is, he's done things differently. Trump 2.0. It's moving fast. It's breaking
beautiful.
things. It's a big,
beautiful
bill.
thing.
Well, it has its moments, but it is obviously compared to the first time round, much better. He's also been a lot more willing, I think, to say it like it is. And we mentioned it briefly earlier, but there's National Security Strategy of the United States that he's published today. It's 33 pages of absolutely blistering realpolitik of America first and its views on the wider world. I mean, it is blistering about the EU. Larger issues facing Europe include the activities of the European Union and other transnational bodies that undermine political liberty and sovereignty. Migration
is all fair.
Migration policies that are transforming the continent. I mean, basically, he goes on to say that will be look unrecognisable within 20 years. Creating strife, censorship on free speech, suppression of political opposition, cratering birth rates, and a loss of national identity and self-confidence. As you said earlier, he calls it a civilizational erasure potential unless something happens now. He's basically saying that Europe are going to be so fundamentally changed by majority non-European immigration that, arguably in 20 years they won't be NATO allies. Obviously, this is going to cause a right old stink back home, and everyone's going to get upset, and cappuccinos are going to be spattered across the European capitals about this. But he's kind of got, as you were nodding along there.
Yeah, I agree with everything he says.
Even the stuff about the fact that Britain will be unrecognisable as a non-European country because of essentially, reading between the lines, he's saying too many people are coming from the Middle East and Africa.
Well, too many people are coming into our country who don't adhere to the culture of our country. And, we've seen the huge problems with the grooming gangs in towns and villages across Britain. The Labour government is doing absolutely nothing about it because they want to appease the Muslim vote. That's a reality of what's happening. And we're seeing, growing... I mean, I'm very concerned by the police being complicit in what's going on. If we looked at West Midlands and the lies that were told over the Israeli team that came to play, we are seeing the appeasement of culture that is alien to our fundamental British liberties. That's a massive problem. And we do have a birth rate problem in Britain.
Yeah.
And we have a problem that, it's partly about immigration, but it's also about asset price inflation and people not being able to get on the housing ladder because of the monetary policy that's been pursued by the Bank of England for the last 30 years. So we've got a perfect storm where our own native Britons are not able to start a family because they can't get on the housing ladder, they don't have enough cash, whereas we're seeing illegal migrants housed in 4-star hotels. And people are like, you always have to be here to look back at Britain and see how extraordinary crazy what is going on in the country. And Trump is calling it out. And the reaction of the British establishment is to attack Trump or attack Elon Musk or say they should be cancelled. This is the Ed Davey line about everybody. Rather than saying these are actual real problems, he is pointing out. I mean, by the way, the birth rate's a problem right across the world.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Japan. Look at Japan. Look at Korea.
Yeah, but again, it's we talk about the special relationship all the time, and it's when people, prime ministers and kings and visit and presidents, and we have nice glitzy state visits, and everyone's gripping and grinning and saying how great the special relationship. But surely the special relationship really is when your friends tell you you're making catastrophic decisions. You should listen.
But I also think a lot of these trends came from America.
Yeah.
So if you look at the cancel culture or the debanking culture,
or
indeed the extreme
leftist
political culture that's led to things like the Charlie Kirk assassination, these trends have come from America and they've come from American money. The USAID was giving money to the Tony Blair Institute.
Of course it was.
Yeah, but of course it was. So all of these things are connected, and it's a Western problem, not just a British problem. But we've caught it worse because the thing about America is, first of all, we've got the First Amendment, which is a bulwark for freedom.
Protected by the second one as well.
But they've also got, indeed,
See, red pill
Indeed.
based Liz Truss.
Indeed.
Were you always
Indeed.
based, or when you were hiding it, or have you just now come to these conclusions?
I believe,
when you were like
I
a
believe
Cameroon
Harry
minister,
Cole. I believe
or
Harry.
a Liberal Democrat activist,
No, I
and the
believe,
Cameroon minister.
I obviously haven't read the scandalous book you wrote about me, but I know you researched my time at Oxford University.
Yes.
Where I was against political correctness in the 1990s.
Yes, you'd also wanted to get rid of the monarchy, but we'll gloss over that one.
Well, I was always quite anti-establishment, but I was.
So did you feel you had to hide your true feelings, and actually this is the real Liz Truss, and actually...
So I've always been a radical. I've always been... I think there's an expression which is a conservative is a libertarian with daughters.
Indeed.
And I've definitely become more concerned about issues like safety since having 2 daughters.
Yeah,
That's definitely true. But I was always frustrated by how Britain was in decline. That's frustrated me.
There hasn't been a moment either before your before your time in office.
I've always believed in low taxes. I've always hated the welfare state.
There wasn't like a red pill moment where you decided to go, you know what, actually I'm just going to say what I think.
I'm trying to explain, because this is when I first got into Parliament, I did do loads of outspoken things. We set up the Free Enterprise Group.
Yeah.
We wrote Britannia Unchained, which was all about this. Then I became a government minister. And when you're a government minister, you're under a lot of pressure to stick to the line to take because of collective responsibility. That's the deal you signed up to when you became a government minister. And, to some extent, I did that. I tried to push the boundaries. If you remember, in 2017, I made a speech about wood-burning goves.
I remember it well,
and I called for the end to the plastic straw ban long before Donald Trump.
First thing Donald Trump did, first executive order.
But I called for it in 2017,
So what
Harry.
you're saying actually is everyone else is catching up with where Liz Truss is.
And if
you should get
remember,
for your show, you should get like a little hat that Liz Truss, like the
dare
Trump
I
ones.
say it, my famous
Liz Truss was right about
my
everything.
famous cheese speech was all about saying we should be producing our own food.
Yeah, I remember.
And which I still believe.
You were right about it. You were right.
I've always had
West
an
has caught
element.
up.
I've always had an element of believing in Britain making things, Britain producing things, Britain re-becoming an industrial power. I've always cared about that. I've always talked about that. Yes, I was a cabinet minister and I had to spout all kinds of bollocks, lines to take, which I absolutely hated doing at the time. And I had to keep my mouth shut.
But you had your eyes on the prize.
But and I had my eyes on the prize. I'm totally honest about that in my book.
Yeah.
I wanted to get to the top because I wanted to really change things. And this is all the things I said in the leadership election were what I believed.
Every interview.
And what I discovered is the rest of the Conservative Party weren't like me.
Yeah.
They didn't actually believe stuff.
They weren't based.
They just wanted to be in the job for the sake of being in the job so they could get it on their CV. And that's one of the most deeply disappointing things that I've found in politics.
We end every interview that we seem to do these days with the same question. Are you done on the pitch?
I'm never done. I'm never done.
Are you a media person now, or would you, if you were given the opportunity to go back in again and have another go, Trump 2.0 kind of style, would you take it?
I rule nothing in and I rule nothing out, Harry.
See, I mean,
all I want to do,
you've moved on that, though, because last time I asked you that, you kind of said, no, I'm done.
I don't think I actually did.
Reading through the lines.
I didn't. I passionately care about saving Britain.
And the West.
And I will do whatever it takes. I care about Britain most. I care about Britain most.
That is what we call not a denial. So you're plotting your return.
I'm not plotting anything.
How do we find the show? Tell the audience where to find the show. Your show.
Oh, my show,
Yeah.
You can get it on X, you can get it on YouTube, you can get it on Spotify.
Wherever
I'm
you
also
get your-
working with Just the News in America, so it's being syndicated across their network as well.
Liz Truss Saves the West. Thank you for joining us as ever.
Great
Come
to
back
be
and
on
see
the
us soon.
show.
And can I come on your show?
Of course you can, Harry.
Excellent. I'm going to hold you to that. Thanks for sitting there.
Very good.
That's it. She's back.